H.P. Lovecraft and Carl Jung, two major figures from the 20th century. And as you can see, I'm standing in front of the Fleur-de-Lis studio, in part made famous by Lovecraft's story, The Call of Cthulu. I have brought you here to compare these two fantastic figures and what their synthesis means in terms of psychology, religion, and fiction. So to start, let's take apart that word, that monstrous name of Cthulhu. Cthulhu is derived from the root word Chthonic, which is also present in Lovecraft's fictional school, Miskatonic University. That idea of the Chthonic realm, that is the underground. That is what is below. That is the unconscious, the collective unconscious. So when Lovecraft makes a creature named Cthulhu, it's clear that this creature is rising up from the unconscious, from the ocean. To grasp that concept, figures arising from the unconscious, of course, were brought to Carl Jung and his concept of archetypes. A concept that I have been describing for a long time as deeply misunderstood and maligned. What I really think is that Lovecraft is a lot closer to the idea of the archetype than pop misunderstandings of Jung, which is to say, archetypes are masses of inhuman, impersonal, indifferent energies that make their marks known on the world and on humanity, but are entirely indifferent and entirely disinterested. Deleuze makes this mistake as well. When he makes clear that there's a kind of a triad, there's the Oedipal animal, the becoming animal, and the symbolic animal. The symbolic animal is Jung's archetypal animal. But what I really think, and when you read Jung closely, and when you read his later works, you see the archetypes are not these simple, old, archaic forms that come back. They are monsters of energy, making themselves heard again and again throughout space and time, much in the way that the Cthulhu mythos interacts with humanity. There are very important comparisons to be made between alien gods and archetypes. This is especially clear in John Keel's work, The Mothman Prophecies, where aliens interact with humans in a very interesting way. And one of the prominent things that was present in the 50s and 60s alien cults is that aliens are beings of love that are here to help humans, to protect humans, to help them on the path to becoming greater. But Keel recognizes that this is utter bullshit. Aliens do not care about humans. They don't care about human affairs. They have their own will, their own desires, and we are merely a tool. We are an expression, we are a toy with which these godlike, energetic beings play with. So I'm sure at this point it's clear. Jung and Lovecraft are both observing the same phenomena, unconsciously. When Jung wrote his Red Book, he was experiencing a psychosis that gave him insight into the collective unconscious. I believe that figures like Aleister Crowley and H.P. Lovecraft shared in this vision of the world's collective unconscious, the energetic beings that populate our world, and how they affect us, and how we can interact with them and survive in this world. I have long described memes as the language, as the expressions of these archetypal presences. And as always, remember, memes matter. It's easier to say that there is no God than it is to say that God doesn't care about you and doesn't care about us. But that doesn't negate the existence of gods. I think it's very important to recognize the human desire to domesticate God and gods. When faced Jungians, I mean, when faced with the reality of archetypes, they shy away, they cower, they're unable to grapple with this massive philosophy, which is a cosmic philosophy. Jung is a deep cosmicist. When one looks at the Lovecraftian idea of living within the dream of an old god, are we not met with the deep message of synchronicity, with the message of the Upanishads, that we are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives inside a dream. And that dream is the patterns of the unconscious. So when we find out that we are in fact subject to patterns that are inhuman and impersonal, that we are unable to control our own lives in a few fundamental, meaningful ways, like there's very little that you can do personally. You watching, you are constrained. You are controlled by gods that you don't even understand. What do we do about it? What does it mean? Oh, it's okay. They're my friend. I'm pals with Thoth. He's my bud. He helped me win the lottery once. He talked to me on 4chan. Memes, you know, that's okay. We commune for the gods. There's a really deep inability to understand just how big, physically big, temporally big, gods, archetypes are. And that if you and your life has mirrored an archetypal dynamic, that it doesn't mean that your life was meaningful. It's precisely the opposite. Meaning was your life. You are merely a product. You are a rerun of an ancient fiction, of an ancient pattern. And your kids and their grandkids and thousands of years in the future, if we make it, we're going to be living out the same patterns. That is the horror of Carl Jung. And I think it has a lot in common with Lovecraft. So, of course, when you talk to a Jungian, they're very interested in the personal archetypes. You know, the way that I experienced Electra, or I am the girl who runs with wolves, or I am doing alchemy with my personality. Like, it doesn't realize, like, you are subject to a set of laws. You're an animal. You're a little animal who follows instinct. And that instinct, where does it come from? The above, the below, the ethereal unconscious, the chthonic unconscious. What more is there than that? That's all there is to it. Actually, here's the one more point I wanted to make. This is a fun one. This has maybe been a little bit of a spooky video, but I have the fun, hip, cool joke. So, in the Church of the Subgenius, which there was just a documentary out about it, and I suggest you watch it. It's good. In the Church of the Subgenius, specifically in their holy book, in the book of the Subgenius, it talks about their god, one of the big gods, but who we're against is Jehovah One, who is Odin, who is Wotan, who is the Jewish god, the Christian god, Allah, and so on. Jehovah One. And when you experience synchronicities, when you experience meaningful coincidences, which of course all Jungians and all New Agers say, well, when those start happening, you follow that, because that's the path you're meant to be on. The Subgenius, who's interested in slack, says, no, that's Jehovah One trying to mislead me, trying to get me to do something. It's a total denial of archetypal meaningfulness. And that is radical and punk in the face of, you know, a whole history of humanity constantly being played with and puppeteered by these forces. So what I'm saying is that J.R. Bob Dobbs is your personal savior. And if you, too, are able to embrace slack and keep and save your slack, you can avoid eternal heaven and eternal damnation, both of which are the same thing. You can be saved from the horrors of Jehovah One, the horrors of Eris. So what can you say? Join the Church of the Subgenius. This whole channel has been an ad for the Church of the Subgenius. Bob.